great pleasure to follow the Noble Lord, Lord Camill's speech, and he's explained well why I put my name to the amendments. I would like to extend my regards to the Noble Baroness Featherstone. I was looking forward to hearing her remarks, and I hope that she's well. I'm interested in, obviously, free speech is sort of my thing, and I'm interested all the time in how we can enhance free speech in relation to this bill in terms of that balance. That's what I've tried to do in terms of amendments I've both supported, and also enhance the rights, the free speech rights of citizens of this country that I fear might be undermined by the bill. I have a number of amendments in my name in this group, Amendment 49 and consequential amendments 50D and 156, sorry, I can't read my own writing, which requires providers to include in the terms of service what methods content on the service is to be identified as content of a democratic importance, and bringing Clause 13 in line with Clause 14 and 15 in terms of ensuring that there's a more enhanced focus on the democratic issue. Amendment 53A provides that a notification is given to any user whose content has been removed or restricted, which I think is especially important that the nature of the restriction in place is made clear, evidenced and justified in the name of transparency, and a key point that the user is informed of how to appeal such decisions. And the aim of Amendment 61 in my name is a call for service users to have proportionate systems, processes and policies designed to ensure that as great a weight is given to users' rights to freedom of expression as to safety when making decisions about whether to take down or restrict users' access to the online world, and also whether to take action against a user generating, uploading or sharing content. In other words, it's all about applying a more robust duty to Category 1 service providers and emphasise the importance of protecting a wide diversity of political, social, religious and philosophical opinion online. I mean, credit to the government. You know, Clause 18 constitutes an attempt on the part of the government in some way to balance the damage to individual rights to freedom of expression and privacy as a result of the bill. But I worry it's a weak duty. Unlike operational safety duties, which compel companies to prevent or minimise so-called harm in the way that we've discussed, to proactively do that, there is no such attempt in insisting that freedom of speech is given the same regard or importance. In fact, there are worries that the text of the bill has downgraded speech and privacy rights, as the Open Rights Group says they are considered little more than a contractual matter. I mean, there's certainly been a lot of mention of free speech in relation to the debates that we've had so far in committee, but yet I'm not convinced that the bill itself gives it enough credit, which is why I support the Noble Lord Camill's explicit references there that he's already mentioned. Also, I have a lot of sympathy with Lord Stevenson's amendment seeking to replace clauses 13, 14, 15 and 18 with a single comprehensive duty, because in some ways we're kind of scratching around. That did make some sense to me, and I'd be very interested to hear more about how that might work. But one thing I did want to note is that the very existence of clauses 13, 14, 15 and 18 that says that service providers must have regard for the importance of protecting users' rights to freedom of expression in relation to content of democratic importance, publisher content and journalistic content. The fact that we even need those amendments is an admission by the government that elsewhere free speech is a downgraded virtue, that you need these carve-outs to protect these things because the rest of the bill threatens free speech, which has always been my worry from the start. On my Amendment 49, it's a response to the bill's focus on protecting the content of democratic importance. I was so delighted that this was here But I think that actually Lord Stevenson of Balmacara has explained or raised a lot of the very questions that I myself was asking about this, because I'm concerned that it's rather vaguely drawn. It might be too narrow or technocratic, politics with a big P rather than politics in the broadest sense. There's a lot that I would consider democratically important that other people might see as, after today's discussion, might see as harmful or dangerous for all I know. But certainly, I think it should be as broad as possible. And so my amendment seeks to write that down by saying that the definition should be including of political, social, religious and philosophical opinion. And that's just my attempt to broaden it out. It's not a perfect one, I'm sure, but that's what it wants to do. I'm also keen to understand why clauses 14 and 15, which give special protection to publisher and journalist content, have enhanced provisions, including an expedited appeals process in relation to the reinstatement of removed materials. But those duties are much weaker, don't exist in clause 13 in terms of content of a democratic importance, and so I've suggested in my amendment that they are levelled up. My Amendment 61 attempts to tackle the duties that will be used for companies in terms of safety. That is the focus of the bill, and stresses that equal weight should be given to free speech as to safety. And this actually relates to the content of democratic importance that I've just been talking about, because I'd argue that really democracy is not safe if we don't proactively promote freedom. And so both those amendments together try and ensure that companies only act to remove philosophical, religious, democratic and social material absolutely in extremis, as an exception, not the rule, and that they always have free speech at the forefront. And just in terms of how we view the content of democratic importance, just one thing that I don't think has really been stressed in the discussions we've had so far, I think we should note that the right to freedom of expression is not just about defending the ability of individuals to speak or impart information, but is also the right of the public to receive this information and the freedom to decide what they find useful, second-rate, what they want to watch, what they want to listen to. It's not just the right to post opinions, but the right of others to have access to diverse opinions and postings. It's the kind of free flow of information that I think is the very basis of our democracy. And one way which the bill, in a way, doesn't allow is it doesn't, in my view, despite talk of user controls and user empowerment, I think take that into account enough. I think, therefore, it's very important that users are told if their posters are restricted, how they are restricted, and how they can appeal, and that's the focus of Amendment 53A. The EHRC says the bill overall lacks a robust framework for individuals to appeal platforms' decisions or to seek redress for unjustified censorship, and I think that needs to be tackled. Clause 19 has a basic complaints procedure, but my amendment is, in relation to Clause 17, tries to tackle what is a very low bar and stresses the need for evidence justification and details how to appeal. Users need to know exactly why there's decisions to restrict and remove. I think that's absolutely crucial. In all of this, Ofcom is the enforcer, with the Secretary of State of the day given a plethora of new powers, delegated powers that I think we need to be concerned about. And as the coalition group Legal to Say, Legal to Type note, the bill in its current form gives extensive powers to the Secretary of State and Ofcom, which will be the first time since the 1600s that written speech will be overseen by the state in the UK. The truth is that we probably need a new Milton, but in 2023 what we've got instead is a Moylan. So I've put my name to a range of noble Lord Moylan's excellent series of amendments, 102, 191, 22, lots of them, all dealing with Ofcom and the Secretary of State, because I think that that's, he will explain that, but that's really crucial that we take that on. I didn't put my name to Lord Moylan's Amendment 294, which I rather wish I had. In some ways, it's a key amendment, as it's basically about leaving out the term psychological from the definition of harm. And I think as we have gone through all of the discussions so far in committee and second reading and so on, the definition of harm, it seems to me, is something that is very slippery and very difficult for us to, because people just say we have to remove harmful content. It's okay to remove harmful content. But I think that it's not so simple. And now I know that it's frowned upon doing any philosophical ruminations at this stage, as I was told off for it the other day. But as it's the 150th anniversary of J.S. Milton's death, let me note that his important harm principle has been somewhat bastardised by an ever-elastic concept of harm. And I think psychological harm, what's added into the mix, and I've spoken on this before, really is something that is going to lead to the over-removal of lawful content. Because what counts as harms is not settled on or offline. There's no objective way of ascertaining whether emotional or psychological harm has occurred, and therefore it will be impossible to determine whether service providers have discharged their duties. Controversies of interpretation about what is harmful have already left the door open to activist capture, and it's regularly weaponised to close down legitimate debate. And the problem of the concept of harm, once expanded to include psychological harm, is a kind of concept creep and subjectivity. And I just think the fact that the lack of definition was actually challenged the Lords Communications and Digital Committee when they wrote to the Secretary of State asking whether psychological harm had any objective clinical basis. The DCMS simply confirmed that it did not, and yet psychological harm is going to be used as a basis for removing lawful speech from the online world. And I think that that can only lead to a censorious and ironically more toxic online environment, with users posting in good faith, finding their access to services, an access that is in fact part of the democratic public square, being shut down or temporarily or permanently, even reported to the law or what have you, just because they've been accused of causing psychological harm. So I think the free speech elements of this bill do need to be strengthened enormously.
I'd like to speak, if I may, to my amendment 63.